We hear a lot about the death toll of Palestinians in Gaza. Now, miraculously, these numbers are released within minutes or seconds of any strike happening inside of Gaza because of the extraordinarily efficient Hamas Ministry of Health. Meet the head of the Hamas Ministry of Health. His name is Bassem Naim. He lives in Istanbul, Turkey. He's a Palestinian doctor. And here he is trying to evade when confronted with the question of whether Hamas murdered unarmed Israeli civilians on October 7th. Listen to the way he dodges and evades the question.
We are not sure, based on what's happening now in Gaza, who is still alive or who has been killed by the Israeli killing machine.
Do you accept, Bassem Naim, that a huge number of Israeli civilians were murdered in the attacks on October the 7th? I know that's previously been denied, but do you now accept that that happened?
I think no human being or anyone who is evaluating humanity can accept harming or attacking civilians. But I have here also to remember of two things. One is that 75 years of civilian Palestinians are under continuous massacring by the Israeli killing machine. Gazans in particular now for more than 17 years are kept hostages. 2.3 million Palestinians kept hostages under the suffocating Israeli siege. And unfortunately, it is supported by the international community.
I understand the point, the historical point you're making. People will be familiar with. The question, though, is specifically about what happened on October the 7th. When it happened, you said it didn't. Do you now? Does Hamas now accept they murdered 1,400 Israeli civilians?
Let me continue again.
No. I wanted to answer that specific question first. You can make another point thereafter, but I just wanted to answer that specific question, if you would. Do you accept? It's a really, really important one because you're seeking legitimacy in what you're doing. And I want to know if you accept as a basic principle your organization, Hamas, murdered people on October the 7th.
I am here in an interview. I am not here to receive order or instructions. I can tell you the story didn't start on October 7th. There are civilians who are 2.3 million Palestinians killed on a daily basis inside Gaza because they are kept hostages by the Israeli
and
forces.
I want to hear you tell me what happened to the civilians on October the 7th in Israel. We can then have a discussion about what follows, what might happen with hostages, why we have got here. But the central premise of this interview has to be simply this. You previously said this didn't happen. I just want you to tell me if you now accept that 1,400 civilians in Israel were murdered.
Unfortunately, you are not allowing me to continue. Give me a little bit time and I will answer all your questions. I have enough time to answer all your questions.
Well, I would like you to answer that question.
1 minute. The instructions from the moment the act of defense, because we are imprisoned, we are kept hostages. It was an act of defense to get rid of this, the walls of this prison, which are the walls around Gaza Strip, which converted Gaza into the biggest open-air prison. It was an act of defense. This instructions from the first moment, not to harm civilians, not to kill civilians. But I have to remember everyone that not Gazans who are using civilians as human shield, because our civilians, we are living in our houses. But
that is a laughable proposition you've just said. That is a laughable proposition because you've just said it was an act of defense and there were instructions not to kill civilians. It was an act of killing civilians. It was an act in which 1,400 civilians were killed and people were taken hostage. It is a simple fact of existence that has happened. And in order to be credible, in order to make any arguments you want to make about the validity of resistance in Gaza, you have to testify to the truth, do you not? To say, we killed civilians in Israel.
You have allowed this terrorist from the spokesperson or lady from the Israeli side to tell you the whole story without any interruption. I can tell you the following: the instructions not to harm or not to attack any civilians from.
Well, you say on October the 7th, you were saying on October the 7th, when people were sent out to murder civilians, you said there was an instruction not to kill or not to harm.
We cannot continue this interview and this. If you allow me to talk, please. If not, I am sorry. I can tell you that the full story and the full truth. I have nothing to hide and nothing to deny.
But it seems that you are hiding a basic premise. That's all I want to get to the point is. And if you say that people were asked not to harm civilians when civilians were killed en masse, that makes everything else you say completely questionable. You must see that.
You unfortunately, this is your story. It is not our story. This is the story adopted from the Israeli propaganda. Again, we have
so it's propaganda that 1400. But this is not a story. This is a really fundamental point to me in this conversation. It is not a story. It is a fact. Is it not a fact that 1400 people died? It was done deliberately. It was done deliberately as an act against the state of Israel. Of course it was. That's why you did it. I just want you to accept that you did it, because that seems to be fundamental in any further discussion that follows.
It is also fundamental that that 2.3 million civilians are under siege for 17 years, killed by dying, by poverty. 55 children in this year killed by Israeli machines everywhere in the West Bank. 75 years of occupation and oppression. We have the right to defend ourselves, to defend our houses and families, but it doesn't execute attacking or harming civilians.
But you did harm civilians. I get that. We testify on this program to the deaths of Palestinians in Gaza. We testify to the deaths of Palestinians in the West Bank. That is not in dispute. But you have to accept, do you not, that you did then take a fight to Israel, a terrorist attack that led to 1,400 innocent people, some of them British, two sisters, 16 and 13, Noya and Yahel Sharabi. They're dead. They're dead now because of a decision made to attack Israel. You must accept that.
It was, first of all, again, the instructions was clear, not to attack civilians, not to harm civilians.
So why did they die? Why did they die then?
We have attacked. Let me talk. Otherwise, I have to adopt your narrative, which is an Israeli propaganda. We have attacked military compounds. Within these compounds, the Israelis have taken all these civilians as a human shield. All these civilians living in these.
You attacked a kibbutz. You attacked a kibbutz. That's not a military compound.
Are suffocating these kibbutzes and the people there. They are suffocating Gaza for 17 years. You have to remember that we are dying every day silently. No one is talking about us. For the first time, Times Radio is contacting someone to talk about.
That is simply not true. We talk about this issue. A couple of other questions, because I think we're going to get anyone on that. There are 200 hostages at the minute. What is going to happen to them? When will these hostages be returned by Hamas to their families in Israel?
Again, I will answer your question, but again,
answer that question, please.
Yes, unfortunately, you are talking about 200 hostages, but you are not even talking about 2.3 million slaughter.
We've already talked about 2.3 million people in Gaza. I'm asking you, what is going to happen, please, to the 200 hostages currently being held by Hamas?
Two things. First of all, we are not sure, based on what's happening now in Gaza, who is still alive or who has been killed by the Israeli killing machine.
So you don't know how many hostages hostages you've got still alive.
Continue my answer. Otherwise, we can stop here. It is impossible. Let me answer my question. Okay. I cannot take from you dictation or instructions. I have the right time to answer my question according to my narrative.
I want you to answer the questions. I want you to answer the questions according to, so we can understand the truth. That's all I want to have. There's 200 hostages that you've taken. What is going to happen to them? Will they be returned? Where are they?
Otherwise, we have to stop here.
Well, answer that question.
We don't know exactly who is still alive because the Israelis have bombarded everywhere, killed families, houses. More than 50, 60 Palestinian families demolished from the civil registry. Al-Qassam Brigade has announced that 22 of this was 3 days ago. I am not sure about the numbers today. 22 of the hostages are killed with our families under the rubble. The second issue that he announced clearly, at the time the aggression is stopped, there is a technical and logistical and security-wise any chance to release all the civilians. It will be done without any conditions. This is one. The other one, we are looking for immediate stopping of the aggression and opening the borders to allow humanitarian aid to enter Gaza for 2.3 million people.
Why have you got
Moment,
civilian hostages if this was a military thing in your view? That exactly is my point when you say this was an act of defense, we didn't seek to target anyone other than the military. You have 200 civilians. Why do you have 200 civilians? Can you guarantee their safety?
again, if you want me to answer, let me answer. Look, there are 5,800 civilians in Israeli jails. Why you are not talking about them?
Because I'm
including
asking
men and
you,
women
because you
and
represent
civilians?
Hamas. We may have to get to the end of this, because like you say, there may be no point in this, but you represent Hamas. Hamas has these hostages. I want you to be honest and say what is happening to them. And you're saying, from what I understand, that if there is a cessation of bombing in Gaza, you will let them go. Is that what you're saying?
You have allowed the lady to talk all this rubbish without interrupting her for 1 second, to talk about terrorist acts, about human.
She was talking about the deaths of her citizens, which is not a point of dispute except by you. One final point before we have to end this. Can you guarantee that humanitarian aid, if it gets in to Gaza, can you guarantee it will go to civilians, the people that you say you care about, the people that you've brought this horror upon by instituting terrorism against Israel? Can you guarantee that any humanitarian aid that gets in will get to civilians?
We are now terrorized for 75 years, supported and technically by a direct involvement of the UK, and therefore our people killed are part of the responsibility of the UK, who are now sending weapons and ships to participate in the.
Will you let humanitarian aid through? Is the question.
People.
The question is, will you let humanitarian aid through?
We are looking for a dignified life. We are not looking for humanitarian aid. If they are not happy with our neighborhood, please leave us. We are occupied people. We have the right to live free and in dignity. If they are not happy with us, please leave us. This is the international law. The international law. We are occupied people. Israel is the occupying power.
I think we have
the right to defend
I think we'll have to
ourselves.
leave it. I've tried to allow you to speak, and I've tried to ask you very clear, very straightforward questions, and you've declined. I think anyone listening to this would notice that you've declined to answer them.
It seems very, very clear that the Hamas Ministry of Health has very, very little to do with the Hippocratic Oath and is entirely a propaganda machine. It is a machine associated directly with Hamas, a brutal, militant terrorist organization, and how careful we need to be with passing on information which has no credible source. When the alleged attack on the Al-Shifa hospital happened at the very beginning of the war, right after October 7th, a missile was fired at the Al-Shifa hospital, and the New York Times rushed to report about hundreds of civilian deaths. The world turned from sympathy to Israel to hate. Subsequently, that was discovered that it was a lie. It was a false narrative. It was actually a misfired Hamas rocket which hit the hospital, and there was other weapons over there as well that caused subsequent explosions. But good news, bad news travels halfway around the world before good news even gets its shoes on. We need to be really, really careful. Consider your source. Remember where that information is coming from. The Hamas Ministry of Health is nothing more than Hamas personified.